Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our CPIC meeting this evening. We'll start with our land acknowledgement.
Alton, as we know it today,
is rich in the history and modern traditions
of many First Nations and the Métis.
From the lands of the Anishinaabe
to the Attawandaron,
the Haudenosaunee,
and the Métis.
These lands surrounding the Great Lakes
are steeped in Indigenous history.
As we gather today
on these treaty lands,
our Catholic social teachings
call us in solidarity
with our Indigenous brothers and sisters
to honor and respect
the four directions:
lands, waters, plants,
animals,
and ancestors
that walked before us.
All these wonderful elements of creation exist,
gifted to us by our Creator God. We acknowledge and thank
the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation
for being stewards of this traditional territory.
Thank you, Andrea. And Nancy, would you lead us please in our opening prayer?
Please join me in the sign of our faith. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Prayer for parents and families. We pray that you have strength, that God gives all of you the strength to do what you need to do each day. God gives you courage, that you will be brave as you face the challenges that are before you. For peace, that your hearts will be calm and peaceful as you go through the day into the night. Provision, asking God to provide all that you need for stamina, spirit, and finances for each day. For direction, that you will be led to embrace what is good and right. Protection, God will keep you safe in this increasingly unsafe world and protect you from harm or wickedness. For joy, that God fills you with the kind of bliss and joy that only God. For compassion, so that you will show compassion to those in need and who have listened to you. For justice, to give a sense of justice, to stand up for what is right, to defend the weak. For wisdom, to grow in knowledge and understanding. For hope, to give you hope that comes from above, the kind that far exceeds what we have. And for love, that our children, your children, are filled with the love of God, that they will know how deeply they are loved, and that love will overflow to others. We ask this in Jesus' name.
Thank you very much, Nancy. Well, first up on the agenda tonight is approval of the agenda itself. If I could have somebody make a motion to approve the agenda, please, unless there are any additions or amendments. Thank you, Lauren. And a seconder, please. Thank you very much. Minutes from last meeting, September 12th, were attached to the agenda. Could I have a motion for approval, please? Unless there are any changes or amendments anyone would like to bring forth. Thank you very much. And a seconder, thank you very much. All right, board update. Superintendent Offal, Nancy, if you could please give us your, actually, sorry, it looks like first up on the agenda before your update. Nancy, is it before your update you want Mark to speak, or is Mark after? Okay, sorry. You're gonna do yours? Okay, thank you.
Before we begin, I just wanted to, if you haven't had an opportunity to meet our new director, John Hines, with us this evening, so welcome, John. This is our CPIC group. Share. Maybe we'll do a roundtable just so you know where everybody, and maybe parents, if you could introduce yourself, what school you're from, or schools, because I know some of you have children in 2 schools within the system, just so John has context of your representation at the table.
Violeta Burani, my kids are at St. Matthew's in Oakville. I am representing Oakville.
Chair Stella Career, my son's at St. Gregory the Great in Oakville.
Kaylee Hepburn, I have a daughter at St. Patrick's and a son at Assumption. I'm representing Burlington.
Hi, I'm Janelle Del Bove. I have 3 kids. They're at St. Christopher's here in Burlington.
Hi, I'm Lauren Wallace. I have 2 kids at St. Matthew in Oakville.
Hi, I'm Denise Gross-Hetty. I have 1 daughter at Corpus Christi, and I am the APSI director for Hull.
Hello, Jennifer Santos. I have 2 children at St. Cafeteria and at St. Francis Xavier, and I represent North Walton.
Good evening, Jerry Bergen from Oakville. My kids go to St. Luke and STA, and I am the one and only at-large representative, and also co-chair with my esteemed colleague Jen.
Good evening, my name is Kevin Kamal. I've got 2 kids, Lou and Christy, representing North Walton.
Marvin. Trustee from Milton, representative on CPIC. Yes, correct.
My kids go to Corpus Christi and St. Anne's. Our school goes well. My wife is a teacher at St. Nicholas and principal at St. Raphael. So.
A warm welcome. I'm very, very proud to be here tonight. I would like to attend as many of these as I can, if in person, if not then virtually. Really, the heart of Catholic education is that partnership of trust where we co-parent. So to see all of you representing various parts of this wonderful board is really, really heartening. And also as a parent of children who are no longer in our system, they are the youngest one's 21. I do know that the efforts of Catholic educators in another board not far from here did a lot to help shape the young women and young man that I have in my life, Kitchener-Waterloo. So it's very much an honor to be here, very much an honor to serve this board, and I look forward to weeks and months and years ahead. So thank you.
Nancy, I'm not sure, is Jordan able to maybe introduce herself online as well? Jordan, are you able to turn on your microphone and introduce yourself?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
We can.
Okay, sorry, I'm in the car. I'm Jordan. I am a parent from St. Gabriel's. I have 2 children there.
Christy, are you online as well? No, she's still on the plane. Okay. All right. Thank you.
From senior staff board update. So I'll start with all the Catholic school councils have been formed and are aligned to policy I-23 procedure BI 84. Some questions that have been raised from the administrators about the co-chairs. So within the policy, we have that the co-chairs of the Catholic School Council must be Catholic. There was a lot of participation from many parents in our schools. I think most of the schools have about at least 10 council members. A few are smaller, but most of them have 10 or more. So if when they had that discussion, and many of you are part of your Catholic school councils, if there was somebody who came their name forward who wasn't Catholic, they couldn't be co-chairs. So just like we shared at CPIC, what could happen is they could then amend their bylaws and have a chair be Catholic and then the vice chair who's not Catholic. So it aligns to the policy. So I'm not sure how they landed with the couple schools that had reached out about that, but that's how they did it. Okay, so that their chairs are all Catholic. The bylaws are being reviewed by the Catholic school councils and are being discussed at their next meeting. Okay. Father Larry Parent from St. Benedict's Parish in Milton is the new head of the Halton Deanery, and the deanery and will be the deanery representative for CPIC. I had an opportunity with Andrea to connect with him last week. He's lovely. He's looking forward to working together with all of us here at CPIC. Unfortunately, he will not be able to attend a CPIC meeting until January, but he will be at a council chairs meeting November 23rd. He is the sole priest at St. Benedict's, which is a very large church. So he's hoping that once he gets an associate, then he'll have more time. But he is committed to beginning sessions with us in June. Under the pillar of belonging, all our elementary schools had a curriculum night throughout September or early October. It is a school choice how a school sets up that evening. Some had welcome back barbecues, some had open houses, some had formal presentations for their curriculum night. That is a school-based decision. The principal would have communicated with the parents what they're doing for that format. Our secondary schools have also offered many opportunities for parents to come into the schools from different events. But again, it's a school-based decision how they're doing that. So some had some parent-teacher interviews with community partners. I attended a grade 8 parent session last week, which had all the extracurricular and program staff present, which was extremely well attended. So each of the high schools is doing it in a different format. Nada, come on in. This week and early next week at the high school level, they are having the introductory parent sessions for the AP and IB program. So parents are grade 8 parents, even our grade 7 parents can attend those. All secondary schools are reviewing their school uniform policy together with their Catholic school council, student council, and staff. Will be communicating that uniform policy to their parents. Secondary midterm marks are going out or have just gone out. Progress reports, sorry, your progress report. Your midterm marks are out on November 24th. So if you have secondary students, you should have got something about your midterm progress. That's usually shared through, I think, my blueprint. Many of the elementary schools are doing their fall fundraiser in October, some with a dance-a-thon on October 31st, some through a one-time donation. Again, that's in collaboration with their Catholic school council. Many extracurricular programs are running in all our schools, and it's wonderful to see all the activities that are available to our students across the system. For our field trips, we will be discussing our field trip policy later in the meeting tonight, our educational field trip policy, as the policy committee has asked for input from CPIC. Our elementary schools are having their traditional grade 8 trips that they would do within the province of Ontario. Okay, so if they had planned, be it a camp trip or to go to Ottawa, some schools have done Toronto day trips. Whatever they've decided to do, it will be within the province of Ontario. Our secondary schools are doing local field trips. There are no ETAC trips, so those traditional trips that would have been offered maybe in Europe or another part of the world are not happening this year. And as a senior team, we're looking at that for December of what the rollout may be for next year. But there are out-of-province trips for robotics, skills competition, offset events, anything where the kids got to a certain level of competition and it's out of the province. Under the believing pillar, all schools have had liturgies or a school mass that they did together with their local parishes or led by a faith animator or a chaplain. I had an opportunity to attend a few of the events in my family schools, which was wonderful. one particular with Vince at St. Raphael's, where their new priest at that church, and it was wonderful to see and listen to how the priest had welcomed the children back into the church. That school in particular hadn't attended Mass as a school community for 2 years, so it was wonderful. And he was so welcoming to the children, just how the whole Mass was done very slow, so that the priest could stop and remind the children, which they did a great job, decorum and just how to respond to the responses in the Mass. It was really nice. But you're hearing that in a lot of our parishes as the children are starting to come back in with the school community. So it's nice to see. Our new theological theme, which Jillian had rolled out at our September meeting, is rolled out to staff at our Faith Day, so the Friday before Thanksgiving weekend, and the schools are now introducing it in their school communities. Sacramental prep with our grade 2 and 7s have begun. It's being led by the parishes in partnership with the school. Some parishes are going back to doing First Communion only within the regular Sunday Masses. Some are still doing it as a class, and that is a parish decision, how the parish priest would like to have the format for First Communion at their school. Now for confirmation, that is a calendar that's set up together with Bishop, where Carleton Catholic has a spot, which our sacraments of confirmation will happen between, it's November until Ash Wednesday. That's when traditionally our confirmations. Under the achieving pillar, educators are continuing to follow their curriculum, but are meeting students where they're at and building upon their skills from where they're at. We still are awaiting our grade 3 and 63 results and hoping to receive that information. Ministry of Education has sent out a resource for parents aligning to the elementary science and technology curriculum. The new curriculum that's been updated. I do have the link, but I will send it out after the meeting to CPIC members to that resource. And then once we have the list of all the new council chairs, we'll send them to that so that they have it and they can share it with the Catholic speakers. Tonight we have two presentations following this. One's from Adam Cross from Business Services with regards to school drainage funds and from the feedback we received from CPIC last year. We're here from our Children's Foundation to share about the events and how the Children's Foundation supports families here in Ontario. Questions?
So just circling back on the co-chair versus the chair and vice chair, with the vice chair being non-Catholic. So that's does not agree with the procedure as it's written today. It doesn't contemplate chairs and vice chair arrangements. It only references co-chairs. So I think that's something we'll have to talk about and perhaps have amended if that's the way we want to go. Is our understanding different somehow? Because I mean, just looking at the procedure, that's how it's written presently.
The procedure doesn't even have vice chair. Right?
No, it doesn't.
And that's what, because Jerry, I think it was us in CPIC. We had addressed that. What would happen? That would happen prior. How could we do it?
It's true. So to my knowledge, in the past in CPIC, we had a non-Catholic co-chair or vice chair. True. However, just to say, I think it's worth discussing at a future meeting, but we'll have to amend, look at getting the procedure to allow that. Just personally, I think we should. I mean, we've gone the direction of, rather than limiting non-Catholic members of council to only two, it's now majority shall be Catholic. Makes sense to me that chair responsibilities could also be looked at differently. But again, not to really decide that, but we'll have to, just so we don't have people offside of our policy procedure.
And the procedure set by seniors. So we'll review it, and then. But I think we don't have anything stated in there about vice chair.
No, it only contemplates co-chairs, and both of them need to be Catholic. So, just calling it out, that should appropriately amend that. And that should find its way down to bylaws of the school councils as well. I suspect they're written to align procedures as they should be. So that, and I think we've also discussed about tabling some review of the bylaws and looking at or perhaps proposing that we go to a standardized set of bylaws that are crafted us and the board that we've handed down. Because we know last year there's huge disparity as to whether that bylaws even exist in some schools, how they're interpreted and applied. So to help to get the board. Anyway, I'll say, you know, there's work to be done on the bylaws. And if that procedural change on also find its way down. Just calling that out for future.
Does anyone else have questions for Nancy? I have a few comments that I wanted to bring forth, and I know I've mentioned some of these to you before, but just from the different council meetings I've been to over the last month or so, there was a concern brought about from parents about the number of student activities happening during the day. I don't know if they were team specific, but the two I heard about specifically were field hockey and baseball, games starting at like 9 in the morning, 11 o'clock in the morning, and kids missing a lot of school. So that was one of them. And the other one was actually brought about by staff attending our meeting, and it was around Power School issues with the software. So I just wanted to bring those to your attention. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to look into either of those.
So for the Power School issue, I believe it's around when the students are, it's around their course selection and it not being able to override the prerequisite. They're aware of it. So unfortunately, when they build Power School for a school year, how they get the company who builds it for us, they put certain stipulation in. And so for this year, so the 21-22 school year has already been built. We can't make any changes for 22-23. They can. Having said that, it's the guidance counselor's responsibility to be able to follow up with the students around the prerequisites if it's not allowed to. So that's what the students are. If they get stuck at that point, they should need to meet with their guidance counselor who will override that, or the guidance counselor should be able to pick it up right away to realize the student.
Okay.
Okay. In terms of the other question with regards to, I didn't get a response from that, but I will continue to follow up, and then I can respond around the field trips that are the games, the sport and activities that are happening.
And the other two were more specific to the schools that I sit on, and one of them was the cafeteria situation at St. Francis Xavier. It's still closed. There's been no communication to the parents or no outreach to the community to look for people to work for that company. So some update on as to what we're planning on doing with that. And the second one, I brought this up at our last meeting as well, is again, the St. Cafeteria community is feeling completely left in the dark as to what's happening with construction. There's been absolutely no communication to the community. And I'm particularly concerned given that next month in November, I believe the grade 8s generally pick their course selections and start thinking about registering for high school. With this lack of information and no movement on the construction side, I really fear that we are going to continually lose potential students to the public board as we have been for the last 2 years. And we're having a real problem building up critical mass there. And I know I've mentioned to you as well that I'm reached out to Director Kroll to find out why the French program has not been moved over there yet, because they are sitting at 270 students and they're not going to reach any kind of critical mass level without movement of that program. So I'm just bringing that up again on behalf of the committee. I'm not sure if you're aware of any updates with respect to the cafeteria or the land development, but I'm just bringing those forward.
So the cafeteria, they're trying to recruit at St. Francis is around staffing. I talked to the principal, discussed with the principal. So same things that we had talked before about having what are the programs for the students who have certain classes could maybe do something. It's just getting some traction. So Mr. Burzen does have a plan. So hopefully we'll see that cafeteria eventually. But it is because of term.
And do you have any update as to, I mean, last time we talked, and I think Marvin, you might have jumped in as well, perhaps the last meeting, about the fact that we were like 98% in terms of like the bid process, the construction bid being completely finished. And I'm just wondering why we're not, and I'm not sure if either of you have any news as to why there's nothing happening on the site.
So I do not have an update recently. A couple of weeks back, we talked to America, so still in the process of awarding the bids to tenders. Do you have any update after that? I think that was the last. I think it's still in the tendering process.
Do you have any idea when that will be completed? No.
Typically, it's a window of 40 days or something.
Okay.
It should be by understanding. Right by.
Okay. Okay.
They're going to have a board update.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Just a follow up with the surgery, because it was discussed at Corpus just for other reasons in terms of Corpus Christi. But my question there was in terms of staffing and having students work as part of hours or part of as a sort of a component of food and nutrition courses. Is there a possibility for students to have hours attributed to working in a servery at any school, or is it completely controlled by an outside group in terms of employment, so you can't bring students in for liability purposes?
Not sure about that, but I think they have to follow the hiring practice for that company because Chartwell does the hiring. Even if we advertise like Notre Dame did, that they advertise within their community, again, it's Chartwell that hires them. So I think if a student wanted to work in aligns with their schedule to work at school, which would only give them the lunch hour, right? That's the only time they could work. I can't see why Chartwell couldn't hire a student that met their criteria.
Yeah, it was just more for volunteer hours and seeing if that could be just sort of alleviate some pressure off in serveries, but having students use that time for volunteer hours if it's possible. But the answer couldn't be said at the time with the principal at the school either, because they couldn't answer. It could be Chartwell's, it could be they're not allowed to bring students in. There was no answer at that meeting, but I thought I'd bring it up here and ask if there was an answer.
I can take it back.
Any other questions for Nancy? Janelle?
Nancy, do you have any update where we're at with the additional tutoring that's being supposed to be filtering down to schools in terms of, I think it was like those catch-up dollars that we were supposed to get to help students either after school, virtually, or in person?
So there is some programs that are being done within from the school, so it's being delivered at the school level. Okay? And so if you have a child who's receiving it, you would know that. Okay? That is like an additional staff member who needs support, like a reading intervention program, things like that. But then there's other programs within the community, and I don't believe that information has come out yet to the schools. Okay? So they do have to let that know, but it's with community partners. So it's not our staff doing it, it's with community partners doing it.
Jerry?
Yeah, one more, please. Just, you brought it up in your update, Nancy, regarding field trips being within Ontario. We actually received an email to the CPIC email account just the other day, in fact, on this very thing, a parent from St. Dominic and St. Mary's questioning where that stems from, that it's limited to just Ontario, so precluding trips to Montreal, for example. And he cites in here, and I haven't confirmed this, but they had come from the Toronto Catholic District School Board, and according to this gentleman, they're still allowing out of province field trips. So, rest of it.
When we start planning field trips for the following school year at the elementary level, and we use that as an example, we usually start that in January, February, just thinking about, because your bookings are usually a year out with whatever company and where you're going. At the time last year, even in the spring, there was still uncertainty where the COVID protocol. And then they became the issue of if we had to cancel, because when we went to COVID, there was some companies who did fully refund the money and things like that. So we said, for this school year, keep it within Ontario. We know where we're going to land, and we're not going to run into that situation. So that is why. I do know that I think there's other parts of the province that have done full field trips, but we made a decision as a senior team so that people could start doing the planning, get everything out to their parent community, what they were doing. Spring of this year, we said this for the 2022 school year is within the province. But 23, 24, that's what we're going to start.
Any other questions? Great, thank you so much for the update, Nancy. And we'll move along to Mark Clare, who's here to give us an update on the Halton Catholic Children's Foundation.
Hi, how are you? I'm Mark. I'm the Executive Director with the Halton Catholic Children's Foundation. Hands up if you've heard of the Halton Catholic Children's Foundation. Fantastic. That's great. This fine gentleman to my right actually happens to be a volunteer on our board of directors and is the chair of our board of directors as well. So Marvin has many hats that he's wearing. I went to St. Raphael's, Vince. And I went to St. Raphael's, yeah. And I went to Assumption with this young lady over here. And you might be thinking, wow, that guy looks about 15 years older than Nancy. How is it that they went to school together? But it is true that we went to Assumption together as well. So, Andrew, if you could. Oh, if you go back just to the USB drive part, and then just the CPIC presentation. Fantastic, thank you. So that's okay. We love technology, right? Here we go. Fantastic. So we go enable content, and then okay, very good. And beep. Sorry, signal to forward the slide. Yeah, we worked it out ahead of time. Who are we? Yes, go ahead. So yeah, go ahead and hit it 3 times. So we are an independent arm's length charity, and we partner with the school board to help students and families in need. And we are self-funded through a variety of our own initiatives. We don't receive any direct funding through the school board or through the government, although we do receive all sorts of in-kind assistance through the school board. My office is located at Notre Dame by chance. My computer is provided by the school board, IT support, that kind of thing. So all sorts of great support through the school board to support the initiatives that we're running. Go ahead. And really our goal is to help students in need so they can succeed in school. So if they have financial barriers to learning, we want them to be able to overcome those financial barriers to learning. And so we do, we raise funds. And we do that for 3 areas. Basic needs, you can see some of those listed there, because it's really hard to learn if you're hungry, or if it's really hard to learn if you're in a stressful household situation. Maybe there's a domestic violence situation, or maybe there's a big health problem with a family member, or maybe there's been a fire in your household. These are all challenges that HCSB students are encountering. The second thing that we help out is school activities with the feet. We're talking about school activities, and lots of great opportunities, but they cost money, right? So we want to give students the same opportunities as their peers for these learning opportunities. And then the third thing, which is a little bit newer, which you may not be familiar with, is that for 2 years now, we've offered a graduate award. And that is for students who are graduating from post-secondary, graduating from secondary school, going into post-secondary of some sort. It could be a certificate program or trades or college or university. And so we offer a $500 bursary for those students. And the schools have an awards committee, so they get to choose who that is. And so this year we helped out 20 students. And what I thought was really neat this year is that 3 of the schools had siblings chosen to receive the award. And so there was actually a set of twins, one set of twins, but the other ones were siblings that were born in different years, but happened to be graduating at the same time. So I thought that was great that these siblings could be awarded this bursary as well. So the three criteria is that they're going on to post-secondary. They excel in the Ontario Catholic graduate expectations, so they're good citizens, right? And then the third thing is that they demonstrate a financial need of some sort. So yeah, go ahead, Andrew, please. And yeah, go ahead and click on the image there. So I have a short video, and this is Jacqueline Davis, who is one of the super duper fantastic social workers that we have within the school board, and that I have an opportunity to connect with on a regular basis. Yeah. Technology, come on, technology. So maybe right in the middle of the face area. If you click there, that might work. Not so much. All right, that's okay. I'm going to tell you a different story instead. So we had an application. So the way the applications work is that a school will identify a student or family need. They can apply to the Halton Catholic Children's Foundation for financial support. And so one of these applications that came in recently is actually we have a teacher on our board of directors who volunteers. And so she had, in conjunction with her principal, had submitted an application. And so she works with students with special needs. And so she had a student who she noticed at lunchtime was making all sorts of excuses. She was too busy to eat, or she was, she wasn't hungry, or she didn't like the food that her parents had packed her. And so a couple weeks went by, and the student asked to speak with the teacher. She was in tears, the student. And she shared the reason that she's not eating lunch is because her family doesn't have food at home. And her mom was really stressed out about the whole family situation, financial situation. Mom cries every day about the bills that need to be paid. The older sister started working with the father to help the family make ends meet. And so this teacher, she invited the family in, and the school supported and the foundation supported with some grocery gift cards. And the family was just so emotional. They were just very, very thankful. They were, in tears. They were praying at the crucifix in the lobby of the school, being so thankful. And the family the parents don't speak English, and so, but the description that the teacher gave us was that they were just so emotional. She didn't need to understand what they were saying. She could see emotionally how important this was to them and how distraught they had been. So for me, it's wonderful to have those connections and to hear about the success of how we are impacting students and families. And Andrew, if you could please forward. Please, thanks. So before the pandemic, our fiscal year is April 1st to March 31st. Before the pandemic, we would help about 200 students a year. And again, since the pandemic in March 2020, we've helped 979 students. So almost 1,000 students in that 2.5 year time frame. So it's basically doubled the number of students that we would typically help in a similar time frame. So a lot of times people ask, are there opportunities to help? And we need your help to identify students or families in need. So if you're in your school community and you encounter somebody, please, have them connect with the school. First of all, it's the first step, right? And then school may have resources to assist. And then if the school feels it's suitable, then they will reach out for an application to our foundation. And so we accept applications up to $300 per family. And so we'll issue funds to the school, and then the school will buy a gift card, for example, to support the family. Help create an awareness. So if you're talking with your school councils, please share information about the good work that's happening for the Help Catholic Children's Foundation. And then financial support. Go ahead, Andrea, please. As I said before, we rely on the generosity of the community. You know, donations from individuals and corporations, different events. Go ahead. Our own events and you know, third-party events. So a lot of times the schools would do events for us. We had a student at the Holy Rosary in Burlington last year made, I don't know how many bracelets, but she donated $700 worth of funds to this foundation because she had lineups of kids trying to buy these awesome bracelets that she'd made. So yeah, go ahead. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the initiatives. So we had our back to school campaign, August, September. The goal was 200 backpacks with school supplies, and we partnered with our friends at St. Vincent de Paul, and they helped distribute because they have a list of people they connect with. And then they included a $50 gift card as well. So that's a great initiative. And then we raised $15,000 plus a $10,000 donation match from TD Bank, TD Halton Commercial Banking Center. So $25,000 raised to help support kids with start of school, but also some of the needs throughout the year as well. Go ahead. Our evening with Bishop Crosby. Anyone been to Bishop Crosby? Fantastic. I have flyers here if you are excited about that. Last 2 years we had an in-person evening with Bishop Crosby. It went really, really well, but it's not the same as in person. We're looking super forward to it. It's November 9th at the Oakville Conference Center. So a new location. Don't show up to the old location, please, because you'll be disappointed. Tickets are on sale. And so really over the next 2.5 weeks, you have time to buy tickets, and we have over 200 people have bought tickets already so far. So it's fantastic. Right. Our 24-hour fast, and coincidentally, we have our 24-hour fast signage up on the corner over there. So this is similar to a walkathon or runathon type of event. It is tied into Lent. Lent, as you know, is the season for praying, fasting, and giving. And so people can, groups in the community would form a team. Individuals would join that team, and they can fast from something. It could be anything they want. It could be, we had people last year giving up their devices, which is, challenging for a lot of people. Giving up social media, or giving up caffeine. Who depends on caffeine every day? Well, nobody's willing to admit it. Us, an honest person over there. We've had principals that have walked 24 kilometers in 24 hours. So different challenges and different ways of engaging. It's a fantastic initiative. Right, Andrew. And then our golf tournament. So we had our golf tournament, our 11th annual golf tournament this past year in July, 120 golfers. It was an awesome, awesome day to be able to get out and be on a golf course, whether you are a golfer or whether you think you are a golfer. It was an awesome day. So go ahead next. And that's it. I invite you to follow us on social media. Our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram are all at Halton CCF. And if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Oh,
yes.
You mentioned partnering with other organizations like St. Vincent de Paul Society.
Yeah.
Which is great. Are there any other community partnerships that you have, or with one that comes to mind too? You mentioned, kids going hungry.
Yep.
Is Food for Kids?
Yep.
I know there's a Halton chapter.
Yep.
Of that organization.
Yep.
Yeah. So any other ones like that?
Yeah. We have lots of other folks in the community. So, Food for Thought, Food for Kids. We're all part of the solution, right? So we, not any one of those organizations are not the solution, but we kind of partner together. And certainly Halton Food for Thought. We've got a pretty good connection. I used to work with Nancy Rumpel, who's the executive director there, and so they, we've had good conversations about lunchtime meal cards. Is that something that the foundation could potentially support at the high school level? Yeah, actually it is. So, and there, the Knights of Columbus in the community. We've got great connection with the Knights of Columbus in a number of different parishes. The Halton Learning Foundation, which is our counterpart at the Halton District School Board. We've got a good relationship with them. So we do have, friends in the community that we work with and are aware of, and kind of directing each other. Like a number of times the Halton Learning Foundation has had people at the Catholic schools approach them and say, well, no, actually you need to go talk to Mark. Right. So we have a good relationship with those organizations. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
I'm just curious, in terms of the referral process, in all circumstances, the family have to agree to it or be aware of, because we've ran into situations where pride is sort of a bit of a concern, where they're embarrassed and don't really want to come forward, but we feel that there's a need that we could refer.
Yeah. So I would say 99% of the time we don't actually know who the family is that we connect with. It's done at the school level, and we recognize that there is pride in coming forward and dignity. So we want to make sure that we maintain that. And so it is at the school level that the school identifies the student or the family that's in need. And sometimes it's the parent coming forward, and sometimes the school is just aware because of circumstances. They're aware already of who the students or the family is. And sometimes it's the social worker, sometimes it's the teacher, sometimes it's the child and youth counselor. But it is done at the school level. Yeah. Does that make sense?
So is it safe to say that a principal could reach out to you guys, receive whatever the need is, and pass it on without the family being aware, I guess? Does that make sense?
Being aware of what?
Like, as opposed to the family saying, like, coming to the principal and saying, we need help.
Mm-hmm.
We identify that there is a need. We reach out to you, we receive something, and we give it to them on your behalf, as opposed to them asking. So, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think I do. So there's always, I think, an element of permission at the school level, right? Where I've talked to principals, vice principals, who have approached a family and said, hey, we have the ability, we recognize that, there are some challenges here. Could you use some assistance? And so I think there's always an element of permission that the school wants to maintain, right? Because of that dignity piece. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much, Mark.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate the time. Yeah.
Hopefully we will see you on November the 8th.
9th.
Thank you. I'll be there a day early. In the wrong place. Yeah. Next up on the agenda, Nancy, did you want to introduce Aaron and what's happening, or?
So we have Adam Cross with us from Business Services, and Adam's going to share the updated FCF plan that Catholic School Councils will work together with the administration with, just the reporting. Thank you, Adam.
Hi, everyone. It's actually Aaron joining tonight. Adam is here as well, but I'm going to kind of lead us through the presentation. We're kind of trying to tackle two things tonight. We're working on year end as well. So we're doing our year end audit for the board that's going on as we speak. So we're kind of both working on a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So my name's Aaron Lofts. I'm the superintendent of business. Adam Cross is our senior manager of financial services. I too am a parent with Halton Catholic. My son, I have an older son that's in university, and my younger son is still a student at one of our schools. I don't know if he likes it as much, but he also knows that he better behave or he'll have to hear from dad as well. So without further ado, I'm just going to take a look at what we have. You should be able to see in front of you a list of our annual school generated funds list of activities. So how did this evolve? Well, we received the feedback back in, I guess, the summertime or so from CPIC as well as some other members of the board, just kind of wanting a more robust standardization, I guess would probably be the best way to put it, of some of our reporting for school generated funds. So over the course of the summer, business services, and more in particular, the finance department, has put together a spreadsheet, a number of spreadsheets with different tabs to kind of go through the school generated funds activities, as well as the annual plan for sign off that's going to be developed with all the school councils as well as school administration. So how did this evolve? Well, we initially took our first attempt at making something that the schools could actually benefit from. We gave it out to the schools to provide feedback. We then took that feedback, and then as Friday, we actually provided it out to all the schools, which as part of that information that we flowed out to schools, we included any carry forward balances from the previous year. So previous year being 21-22. For us in finance right now, 21-22 is the budget year we're working on, so I got to make sure I catch myself as to what the current year is. So our carry forward were all our carry forwards from the last school year. So what we see in front of us, I thought maybe the easiest thing to do would be to put an example in for everyone to kind of see how it works. So this one here is, and I know the school says Holy Rosary. This is not Holy Rosary. It's just place marker for Holy Rosary. These are not their transactions. I just made up transactions for us to kind of work through. So I know in the elementary panel, at least, we all, or a lot of our schools, do a dance-a-thon around this time of year. So the expected date, so you can see the planned activity. Let me just get my notes here. Planned activity is a dance-a-thon. First column is revenue. Category that it's under would be school fundraising. Expected date is October 31st, 2022. Expected revenue, again, arbitrary number, $10,000. Net proceeds, so right now it's $10,000 because the expenditures are not there. I want to focus on the left side of this first, so this area first, and then we'll go over to the use of the funds. So what expenses could there be with respect to a dance-a-thon? Well, you could have DJ costs estimated at $500. So the school would in turn go and put $500 in, not as a negative, just as a positive number. The formula itself will kind of adjust the net proceeds accordingly. Prizes for the dance-a-thon just estimated $2,000, and student refreshments at $750. So that nets out to $6,750 of revenue as a result of the dance-a-thon. So what's the plan or the intended use of those proceeds? Well, again, arbitrary guesses on my part. iPads, $4,000. Speaker on mental health throughout the year, $1,000. Sports equipment, $1,750. So what does that total down to? $6,750. So we have net gain or loss at the end of the year of 0. So in a perfect world, everything that we raised that year would be spent in the year that it was raised. Now, remember before we mentioned we had some carry forward balances in our school generated funds? That's actually at the bottom. Again, I made up this example here. So these are all made up numbers. So here's our carry forward balance from the previous year for Holy Rosary, hypothetical carry forward balance. So we had 14,700 remaining for the previous year. So I initially was deciding, well, how we're going to show that being spent. I just had end of year presentation. Now this is obviously a pretty good presentation as it costs $14,700. The comment that I put in there was just that we're using the full carry forward amount on the presentation. So at the end of this school years, in a perfect world, we would have no money remaining. All the money, both the carry forward as well as the money earned in the year, would have been spent. Now, all schools also have to have an annual plan. Now, this annual plan must be published on the board website by the end of November. And those plans are going to be signed off by the superintendents as well. So they'll be signing off. The school superintendent, the family of school superintendents would also sign off on this plan. So you can see here, this is an example of how we tried to standardize the reporting plan for all schools so that every school, whether you're in the south or in the north or in the east or in the west, would have the same plan so that someone could just go on there and see very quickly what the school's plan is. And it's not being, there's no differences between schools, it'll all be the same. So looking at this one here, we had the opening balance, the 14,700. We had the proceeds of current year. So the current year amounts, we made the 6,750 on our activities that we have, so the dance-a-thon. What were we doing with the current year balance? Well, we're spending 6,750 this year on activities throughout the year, as well as we're spending our carry forward balance of 14,700. So at the end of the year, again, like we mentioned before, all our balances should be paid off or should be used up. So you can see that we then have an area for the principal to sign off on this, as well as the school superintendent to sign off on this. So then this will then be printed off and put onto the website of the school. We also included for schools just a glossary of terms, just to kind of get an idea of what definitions are and examples of each. So we're providing that, as well as we're adding. Now this part here, everyone, we haven't sent this out to the schools yet. We're going to send it out first for feedback, and then we'll be having the schools complete this as well. So this is the SGF reporting. So we suggest reporting 3 times a year. So reporting November 30th, reporting period 2, February 28th, and period 3, the end of May. So that's been our suggested reporting periods throughout the year to kind of give a snapshot on where the schools are as far as utilizing the revenue that they received as a result of the funds generated throughout the year. So this example here, I just kind of did one for November 30th. So planned revenue, we were planning on 6,750. As of the end of November, estimated that we got 5,000 in. And why is there a $1,750 difference? Well, it's relating to outstanding collections that haven't been received as of yet. That's the revenue side, the first one. The second one is the expenditure side. So we're looking at the expenses. Well, we know what the some of the school fundraising expenditures were. We had $3,250 that we had planned. This actually should have been $6,750. So you can see here that we have a difference of $3,500. As you saw before, if you remember back on the annual list of activities, what we had suggested having iPads, which theoretically could be purchased immediately, sports equipment, and speaker on mental health. Those are things that could happen later in the year. So then you would go back to here and just say, you can type into this, please explain the difference. $3,500 is remaining, hasn't been expensed yet, and expense to expected in spring. And then in turn, these could be shared with the school community, and more in particular with the council. And each 3 or so months, we would be, well, not us, but the schools would be providing additional reporting, at least for the school council to discuss as to A, what the plans are, and B, where we are as far as the expenditures go for the year. As I mentioned, that we have sent the first part out, so the list of activities in the annual plan summary. It's these last 3 tabs, reporting period 1, 2, and 3, which we're looking for feedback to see if more explanations are needed or if other kind of reporting mechanisms are required with relation to this quarterly reporting. I call it quarterly, but really it's every 3 months. Another question may be, well, why are you have 3 tabs? Aren't they both basically the same? They are the same. We just thought it was important to kind of have that historical data in for each period. So that's why we did it as period 1, period 2, and period 3. Hopefully this helps and is taking up some of the feedback that we received earlier and tried to put it into a format that's easily understood to the reader. That's always a challenge on something like this. Could you always have more information? Sure you could, but then it becomes the balancing act of how much information is actually needed or understood by the end user and by the reader of the reports. Nancy, that kind of concludes what Adam and I kind of wanted to go through tonight. Hopefully going through it as an example was easier to understand instead of just a PowerPoint, which we initially were thinking of doing. So I'll kind of open it up for any questions from anybody or thoughts.
I have a question, Erin. I think from my perspective, at the high school level, the biggest concern for me when I'm looking at an SGF is there is a huge volume of activity around the student activity fee. Is that what it's called? The registration fee, the $65. This doesn't really tell me anything. It still just says actual expenses. So I'm presuming that the line item, unless I'm reading this wrong, Aaron, the line item instead of like external charities would be student activity fee. And it would just show the opening balance, the revenue and expenses, which doesn't really give me any detail as to what those expenses are.
Those would be questions, actually. I'm sorry, I don't know. I can't see, my screen's small here, so I'm apologize if I'm not addressing you by name. I just can't see it here. But those would actually be those are good comments, actually very valid comments. We do have the one that we went through tonight is an elementary example of the reporting. The secondary, again, those are kind of questions as well for the principal. It would create conversation. Adam's on the line as well. Adam, I don't think we have that broken out though in the secondary panel. Do you know it offhand if we do?
We do have a line that shows student activity fees. So under that category umbrellas, there is a line that shows it. But again, to your point, this does show the kind of the summarized expenses. There is an opportunity here for the schools to provide that feedback, and as Aaron kind of outlined in the plan piece or the list of activities, the inputs for the current year, that's really where there's the opportunity to show the details. So this is what those fees are intended to be for. This is what we intend to spend those fees on, and then summary is more so, okay, this is what we've spent so far. The question comes from your school council as to, well, what makes up those expenses, and then that's the opportunity for the principal and finance clerk to provide those details kind of in the explanation to kind of Aaron's point, or with those activity fees, if it was a yearbook or something, you'd have the comment saying, well, we haven't purchased the yearbook yet because it's November, and we don't do that until the spring, or vice versa. If you spent the money, kind of what it's related for. So we've left it a bit open for the schools to kind of work with their school councils as to the level of detail, but we do want to have that summary page, and that's kind of when you look at those reporting period ones, it's more of the summary, and then kind of the context is shared in the explanations for the variances, because the costs should be outlined on this list of activity sheet. So then it's just a matter of where are we to date with what we said we were going to spend that money on.
Okay, and then my second question would be, Aaron, and maybe I'm just having a hard time visualizing here how it would look, but if there were multiple fundraising activities at this particular school, and maybe it's just the way that the math works going across for me, how would it look? Because, for example, you might have only $500 left over from this, and you take that and something that's left over from something else to maybe make $1,000 expenditure on something. How does it work? Does it flow through that it just keeps accumulating?
I'm just trying to do an example right here to show you. So if we had $5,000 or $6,000, you would now have $12,750 in revenue and proceeds is spent for the upcoming year. So you can just keep adding in the projected revenues to come in as you, I guess, Christmas donations. I'm not sure if they have something, I don't know, selling things that the students had created, generated $6,000 in revenue throughout the Christmas season. So there was an estimate of expected revenues of $6,000 or so. Cost would be in this case zero, because we're just assuming that it's been donations of some sort. And then we now would have $12,750 as proceeds for the school to spend. So then you can see now we have a shortfall of $6,000, and let's see if I can just make this easier so I don't have to keep scrolling for everybody. There. So you can see now that we have 12,750. We've only earmarked 6,750 for activities throughout the year. So you still would have $6,000 remaining to be allocated out as some form of expenditure throughout the year. So you can still go back and add revenue as you estimate what it's going to be. So that's a good point. Secondary schools have different sources of revenue relative to the elementary panel. So it would have to be added in as you go through the year. And then in corresponding, you can put your expenditures on this as well. So you can kind of put the initiatives, on this case here, Christmas donation. So let's say there was some form of expense relating to that. You could then go put the fundraiser expenditure as a line, and then it would net out at the bottom to how much you have available to be utilized throughout the school year.
Okay, my last question, and sorry, because I'm an accountant, but how does this actually, I'm presuming there's no linkage between the financial accounting system and this, so this would all be manually input. Is there any controls in place to make sure that the numbers are being picked up properly and being put into the right categories? Then we're not just being handed a piece of paper with numbers on it that don't tie anything in the GL.
Very good question. This is actually all estimates here. So look at these ones as budgeting. The actuals would come through on the monthly reporting period. So they'd be over here, and these would be direct pulls from the system itself. And those categories, the umbrella categories, are actually categories that are currently labeled in the system that the schools use. So this is where more of the reporting is, the ties and the checks and balances would be. In the list of the annual plan, it's essentially a budget, what you're budgeting for the upcoming year. And this is where you would kind of look at your budget and look at what your actuals are. And those actuals would have to tie to the report that's generated by the schools on the quarterly or so basis.
So that's something you guys would be checking when you look at those reports. I'm just wondering in terms.
Yeah, the school would be checking. Finance, we wouldn't necessarily be checking these reports, but the school secretaries would be on the secondary panel. Not school secretary. Secondary panel would have a financial assistant, as well as the principal would be looking at it as well. Finance necessarily would not be checking on a monthly basis or quarterly basis these reports. No, finance wouldn't have the ability to do that.
Just wondering, because then it makes sense for me if I'm on a council to be asking to see that tie-in to make sure that it is actually reflective of what's in the financial statements.
It should be just a simple report that can be shown. It's a print off. The school secretaries and the financial clerks know what report to run for that, and those numbers should be populated into this report that we see here right now as the actual expenditures or actual revenues for the period in question.
Great. Are there any other questions for Aaron?
Just touching further on kind of oversight matters. I mean, I don't know, in terms of the admin and the secretary being the ones preparing and doing the checking. Yeah, exactly. No separation of duties there. That piece aside for a second. Just in terms of oversight, in terms of ensuring that all schools are in fact reporting on time, preparing and submitting and posting their annual plan on time and being posted publicly to, I think you said the board site, correct? Is there oversight for that? And if so, is there follow-up happening to make sure that gets done across the board?
Well, there is a segregation of duties because the principal is ultimately responsible for it. So if the school secretary puts it in the school, principal would also check it over. So there is that part before it's brought to school council. With respect to the overall, everyone, we do have that. All these funds roll up into the board's budget, or sorry, the board's financial statements. So we're going through an audit right now. As part of that audit, all these funds get rolled into and are part of the audit that we're currently going through on a yearly basis. Our auditors right now, our auditors are Deloitte. Deloitte will go out to 6 or so schools and look at everything at the school level, including school generated funds. So there is that. Each of our schools are not audited on a yearly basis, but every 3 or 4 years or so, our schools should be audited in one form or the other, either it be by our RIAT, our regional internal auditors, or by Deloitte, our board auditors, as well as any time that the board staff needs to go out and help a school out as well. We look at obviously these reports. So there is that comfort in that the funds are being audited at a point in time. It's not necessarily the finance staff that's going out there. We don't necessarily have the ability to go out to all our schools. Having said that, as part of our family school superintendents, they will be signing off on all these reports as well. So these reports have to go to the our superintendents for all our family of schools, and they would be signing off on the annual plan summary, the one that has to be posted onto the school's websites.
Just to add to that, so once the superintendent, family school superintendent has signed off, all the plans do get submitted to finance, and that's our kind of opportunity to check to make sure what's filled out in the plan kind of makes sense as to how we thought that the plan was supposed to be completed. And if there are any concerns at that point, we would follow up to just make sure that the schools are using the new properly. And then kind of to Aaron's point, we are hoping to kind of spot check some schools internally throughout the year just to make sure that the schools are using it appropriately and that the numbers that we're seeing in school cash are matching kind of what individual thing. But again, that's just going to be on a sample basis, not every school every year. We just don't have the power to do that.
I should mention to everyone, just so you have the comfort, these school generated funds are not rolled into the board's surplus or deficit or anything like that. They're earmarked, they're kept in a separate account. So they flow into us for year-end purposes as we collate all the data. It all comes up, all the accounts come up. We report on it as an aggregate, but it remains at the school level. So the board is not having control over any of the school generated funds. It's obviously left at the school level. When I say the board, I mean the central location of the board.
Thanks, Aaron. Any other questions for Aaron? Thanks so much for your time, Aaron. Appreciate
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, Adam and Aaron.
All right, sorry, Marvin, it's a little bit late in the agenda, but we're finally at the trustee update. If you could please provide your update. Thank you.
Thank you. Since the last CPIC meeting on September 12th, trustees have had 2 board meetings. At the September 20th board meeting, there was a staff presentation on sustainable schools, and our board has ranked 2nd out of 72 school boards in Ontario, about 5,000 plus schools, and is rated as the most sustainable school top energy performing board in the GTA for the 2nd year in a row. This is something that we should be really proud of, and all the initiatives we've been doing in schools, all the green initiatives. There was a staff report on the secondary school assessments, and trustees were provided with information regarding final assessments in response to a past board resolution where an outline of final assessment plans from subject councils for grade 9 to 12 for the 2022-23 year was requested from staff, and staff will continue to ensure that quality assessment and evaluation practices will be used in secondary schools, and students will receive feedback and improve their learning and exam writing skills. At the October 4th board meeting, there was an action item on universal washrooms. The trustees asked staff to conduct a feasibility study with the goal of creating a universal and barrier-free washroom for students or staff at each and every HCDSB school as well as the CEC, and that this report was to be presented at the January 17th, 2023 regular board meeting this past. And there was an information report on the strategic plan for the year 2016 to 2021, and trustees were provided with monitoring results of year 6 of implementation of the Halton Catholic District School Board multi-year strategic plan. That's all I have in my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Marvin? You got off easy tonight. Thank you very much for the update. Okay, next up on the item, 5.1 is our WAPC update. Denise.
Thank you. I'd just like to start by saying that on behalf of myself, on behalf of the Board of Directors at OAPC and the Executive Director, Annalisa Crudo-Perry, we look forward, Director Klein, to working with you at OAPC going forward in the future. I attended a Board of Directors meeting on October 30th, September to October the 1st. A lot of information came out of that particular meeting. I'll talk about that very briefly in a moment. In terms of what's going on locally, in terms of OAPSI, Andrea and I are working to get those names of OAPSI reps all put together so that I can begin sort of the process of working with the reps this year. The commissioning ceremony will take place at the Council of Chairs, as it does, I hope, on the in November, because that's traditionally when we commission OAPSI reps. I am planning a meeting prior to that with the reps, so the names are important to come, so that in early November I can have that as I move forward to work with them this year. As well, I have a meeting tomorrow night to finalize a project that I've been working on quite a while. I'm hoping it's going to come to fruition by the end of October, which is the Halton webpage on the OAPSI website. So I've been working really hard. I've got my categories all down sort of, I think, to where they should be, working with the IT at OAPSI. And just briefly, the idea here is to highlight Halton among the school boards that belong to OAPSI as an organization. Part of that is to provide information to the OAPSI reps. Another part is to highlight what's going on in our Catholic schools in terms of OAPSI reps information they send to me. I'm working with an organization through one of the schools that does some volunteer work, and to put that on the page and feature them. So there'll be a Halton feature. There'll be links for parent resources, etc. So I'm pleased to announce that that should be finalized by the end of October. So that's another project in the works. In terms of the Board of Directors meeting, something that I'm here that I feel it's important for OAPSI at this level to pass along is information that's interesting, but also questions that come up at the Board of Directors meetings. So one of them was listening to, and I hope I get this man's name right, Nick Milanetti. He's the Executive Director of OXTA, which is the Trustees Association in terms of Catholic trustees. So one of the pieces of information came up about online courses and the choosing of online courses, and looking at the CVO, the Catholic Virtual Ontario, as the course selection for keeping Catholicity in online learning. So I wasn't aware of this when this first came up in terms of the choices that, in terms of the secondary level, where would guidance counselors pull course selections from? I was only aware of TVO in terms of my own daughter, and looking at secondary level in terms of choosing. And based on Nick's sort of his presentation on CVO and the work at CVO, there are 34 Catholic learning courses that are there. Now, the question came up at my school council meeting was, and I asked the director, the principal, are students able to choose these courses through their guidance counselor in terms of, because before that there was not the Catholic basis in online courses from what I understood. So, so the principal at my school, I mean, he was going back to check and drawing from, I can't get the name of this right because I don't have it written down with me, where they were choosing courses from in terms of guidance counselors. So he did give me an answer, but I was going to bring this up as well in terms of just a question. So maybe after I finish, Nancy, you can maybe answer that question on how those courses, and are those courses being pulled from CVO at all? So that was one question. One sort of piece of information was interesting. The other one for parents maybe of interest is a presentation by Dr. Ann Jameson, who's the Executive Director of ICE. And she's one of the, ICE is one of the partners that we sit with as OAPSI on ICE. And one of the things that was of interest to me that you might find interesting was sort of truth reconciliation and just your background in Indigenous cultures learning and how to bring that forward more in terms of our parents within our boards. So a couple of good resources that were presented to me that I thought was quite interesting. One was and my student council, the school council, actually somebody knew about this course, which was interesting, was it's a free online open course that's offered by the University of Alberta. It's the massive open online course. It's free to take, called Indigenous Canada. And it is quite a long course, but it's quite, they were sort of showing us a bit of the components that it comprises of. So if you're interested in learning more about Indigenous history, culture, it's a good start for that. Another piece that was introduced to us was the Jesuit Forum. So if you haven't heard of that, it's worth going on to their website, jesuitforum.ca. They have a dialogue guide on justice and right relationships. It's called Listening to Indigenous Voices. So it's another sort of opportunity to look at resources. And the other one is the Our Lady of Guadalupe Circle, a Catholic organization. It's a coalition of Indigenous people, bishops, clergy, lay movements, and institutes of consecrated life engaging, just reading here, engaged in renewing and fostering relationships between the Catholic Church and Indigenous peoples in Canada. And their website is Our Lady of Guadalupe Circle.ca. So some very interesting, let's say, present opportunities for online learning, and they can be brought to councils, I'm sure, as well, for your parents if they're interested in more of this. So that was part of the focus of our board of directors meeting, among other things. And I will be attending another board of directors meeting December the 3rd. We're working on our strategic plan and other things like the AGM and the upcoming other pieces that will happen throughout the year. So I will report on that next time. So I will take any questions, but that's my report. Thank you. Yes.
Denise, thank you for that update. It's really nice and there's so many things happening there. But is this information being shared with the school council, so do they need to go and get the information?
So what it will happen is, so my job is to pass this information through a WAPC reps. That's the line of communication. Then this gets then therefore hopefully disseminate amongst the school council members there and then to the parent communities. I thought it just important that I presented here so that you have an opportunity to have a first sort of intro to it. But that's the idea. And I'm hoping that by putting up a Halton webpage on a WAPC that our reps can go to and any parent can. So it's not a WAPC reps that can access that webpage. There's virtual speakers that have been featured in the past that you can access. There's a parent resource list as well for speakers that you might want to access for your council. So, but the idea was to sort of close the gap in terms of some of the information that any parent can access, as well as feature us as a board. Because right now, the big boards like Toronto Catholic and Dufferin Peel have the web pages up. And so I'm hoping to sort of get up there next and actually beat Kitchener-Waterloo, who's competing with me in terms of time, I know. So it's just sort of a cute thing, little thing we've got going. But yes, that's the idea, is to sort of get this information out and share. Yes.
Thank you, Denise.
You're
Lucky to
welcome.
have you here.
Thank you. No problem.
Thank you very much, Denise. Any other questions for Denise? Great. Next up on the agenda is an update from each of our subcommittees. The first one up is the School Council Support Committee. Janelle, are you giving that update or is someone else giving?
Sure. So we met as a group and sort of have a rough draft of our, I don't know why that's doing that. Thank you. Yeah, so our subcommittee met. We're currently working on our training for co-chairs and chairs, which I think, Nancy, we've landed on November 2nd as our date. So I think now that Nancy has all of the information in terms of who the contacts are for each school council chair and co-chair, a formal invite, I think, is going to go out. So in terms of the presentation, we're just working on sort of finalizing that and dividing up the presentation in terms of who will present what. So that's where we're at. Any questions?
Do you need any support from anyone else, like in terms of content, or are you guys okay? Do you need any support?
Yes.
I think we're good. A lot of the homework has been done by the handbook already. Content's there. We've just going to divide up the roles and the speaking parts, and Cherish has done a phenomenal job of setting up the presentation for us, and obviously a little bit after the meeting.
Sounds great. And do we want do you want just your subcommittee there? Do we want all CPIC members to be present? I mean, not obviously participate, like presenting, but what do you think, Jane?
I mean, I defer to the subcommittee on this, but I mean, I think it'd be good for everyone on the committee to at least observe it, even if it's after the fact. It's going to be recorded, right? We're going to record the session. Yeah. So yeah, I'd encourage everyone to at least watch it and be familiar with it, so that when we do have councils asking, about the training that we offer and it's available, we're familiar with it. So whether or not you want us all there for the live session, that's up to you guys.
Yeah, I'm open to whatever. My question to you, I guess, as delivering this in the past, do you guys want to see a rough draft of what we're going to present beforehand for feedback, or?
I mean, you're basing it off the handbook, which we've been through. So yeah, unless you think you need additional eyes on it, I'm happy to guys to run with it.
Yeah, I would agree. Unless you want like I don't know if there's someone that's doing a one over the entire thing, so it's just not all pieces together, but someone to kind of go through and make sure it's kind of consistent. Otherwise, I think we're happy to let you guys run with it. But if you want that, Jerry and I are available.
Yeah. Whatever you guys need, honestly.
Charis, if you have the PowerPoint, you could maybe share with all of CPIC, so everybody on CPIC could see it, and then if they have feedback, they can give you.
Great. The next subcommittee is the Parent Community Engagement Committee. I will speak on that behalf tonight. We met a few weeks ago now. We've kind of narrowed down what we would like to have guest speakers speak on. I think we've agreed that we would like to do one on cyberbullying, and I think we've agreed on a guest speaker for that. And I think we've also agreed that we'd like to have Dr. Jean Clinton come and speak as well to the parent community, either on mental health, like she's going to do a presentation for us at council chairs, or perhaps on the teen brain under construction, which is one of her presentations she's been doing over the last couple of years. So I think we're leaning towards the teen brain under construction, but open to any feedback. And maybe after we have the mental health presentation, we might feel differently, but we can always revisit that, but at least we will get her booked. The third speaker we are debating on is someone we'd like to speak. We'd initially talked about having a guest speaker come and talk about different types of discrimination, whether it be racist, sexual orientation, disabilities. And so we kind of took that all together and decided it would be good to have someone speak to our children about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so we have found two guest speakers that we are confident would do a good job on this topic. One is pretty well known in this to this group of people, which is Michael Way-Skinner. He is with the York Catholic District School Board and has done similar talks like this. He actually did one for us June of 2020, Jerry, I think. Or 2021, maybe? No, 2021. And I think it might still be on our website. I'm not sure, though. I have to get together with Andrea and maybe see if it's still up. And the other one is Julie Kratz, who has published a few books and is a professional speaker. And she does a presentation called Developing the Next Generation of Little Allies. We've had some discussion within our subcommittee about which of the two guest speakers we should use. We have not come to a consensus at this point. We would be happy to hear any of your thoughts on these two guest speakers, whether it be tonight or whether you want to go home and look into both of them and get back to us to help us make our decision. But that's the three guest speakers at this point that we are looking for to use our program money with. As we mentioned at our last meeting, we are also going to be having speakers speak in the Advent season and the Lenten season, faith-focused presentations. The Advent one is booked for November the 29th, and the Lent one is to be determined, likely sometime in March. But, and then the third thing that we will be working on, we haven't started working on yet, is possibly implementing the parent awards at the end of the year, we do have to give some thought to how we would want this to work. For it to be successful, what the criteria would be, how we would accept nominations, how it would be choose winners, etc. So that's something that's still in the works. So that's our update. And I guess at this point, if there's anyone who has any thoughts on the guest speakers on diversity, equity, and inclusion, we'd be happy to hear your thoughts.
Well, I'll circle back on the Michael Wake Skinner content. So I guess it is a couple of years ago now. We paid him to produce a series of videos. I think it was three videos on inclusion through a Catholic lens. So it's pretty good content in my view. So that content, we still own it. So that's something that we could promote just kind of as is. So rather than rehiring him to do the same thing, if it indeed is the same thing, perhaps we utilize the content where we paid for it and promote it. And that may free us up then to hire the other speaker. I'm sorry, what was her name?
Oh, Dr. Jean Clinton or the cyberbullying one?
No, yeah, Jean Clinton.
Okay.
Yeah, so perhaps that'd be the way to go. Just one thought.
Anybody else?
Yeah, just one. Just thinking, if we've done a series of videos and we've had Michael Wake Skinner already speaking, I'm just wondering if when we send the invite out, if people see it and be like, oh, I already heard this guy, I've already seen his videos, I'm not going to attend. And I don't mean that to sound like I'm diminishing him at all. If the people who are going to watch it are the ones who are probably already more engaged and they've already seen it, we might lose that little bit we already have. It's just a thought.
Thank you for that, Lauren. Okay, well, as I mentioned, we would be happy to hear any feedback any of you have. Maybe as a subcommittee, we can quickly meet at the end of this meeting to just pick a date for our next meeting. That would be great.
I had my hand up. Trustee O'Brien, and thanks so much for your input. You asked for some input. I want to echo Jerry a bit. Michael Skinner did a presentation to the trustees, and it was outstanding. And it's an area that's a bit controversial, but I thought he really brought everything together really clearly in a Catholic lens. I think he's really good live because the way he answers questions. So that's just my input. I don't know the other speakers at all. They're probably very good too. So you asked for input. There it is. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And sorry, I can't see you with the screen behind me with your hand up, but thank you very much, Trustee O'Brien. Okay, next up on the agenda is the update from the Social Media Committee. Lauren, are you giving that? Thank you.
Yeah, that'll be me. So Jerry and I met earlier today, and Christy is joining our subcommittee. So now we get to go up to 3, which is very exciting. So Jerry and I have had a couple of meetings, and like I said with Christy today as well, to kind of talk about what we want to do with our social media going forward. So we've got a series of posts that I've been working on for the last week, pretty much ready to go, and I think I'll start throwing them out this week. So it's basically just the first set of posts, just kind of talking a little bit about what CPIC does, but trying to represent it a little bit more graphically for socials. So I've got a set of 3 for those. You'll see those kind of over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We also have just a generic post for the election on Monday that just says, go vote. This is why you should care. Just very, very generic. And I've just lost my train of thought. No, but that pretty much is where we're going with socials for now, at least for the next few weeks. We have our regular meetings set up so we can talk about obviously when we have events coming up, it'll be really easy to try to use our socials channels to promote the events that we're doing, but it's trying to figure out exactly what we do in between to get engagement up without just being too flat. So it's coming along well.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Lauren? Great. And sorry, I've just noticed it is 8:36. I believe we need to have a vote to continue the meeting. I anticipate it to be another 15 or 20 minutes for us to do our board committee updates and discuss council chair meeting and the last policy, the educational field trip policy that's on the agenda. If we can just go around the room and vote whether or not we want to continue the meeting. We'll start with you, Ada. Kevin? Violetta? Cherish? Kaylee? Janelle? Lauren? I vote for yes. Yes, great. Okay, we will continue on. Just quickly, I'm not sure if many of these board committees have started yet, but looking for updates for the board committees that we do have CPIC representation on. The first one is mental health. Violetta, do you want to give that update?
There's no update. We're going to have our first meeting this Wednesday at 2 o'clock, so we'll have more information next meeting.
Thank you, Violetta. Bullying prevention, Kaylee and Lauren.
Yes, I can give the update. We've had 2 meetings. We're gearing up towards the Bullying Prevention Awareness Week, which is November 20th. And part of that, we've broken off into some subcommittees to create a communication piece with students from all over the board doing a short clip. And then we're developing a peer-to-peer mentorship with elementary and secondary students.
Great. Ada, do you have anything for Journeying with Jesus? Do you have an update for the Journeying with Jesus board committee?
I haven't had anything about it yet.
No problem. Homeschool Parish Partnership, Cherish.
No update at this time.
Thank you, Cherish. School year calendar, Janelle?
No update. Actually, sorry. I haven't been contacted by anybody, so I'm not sure when that takes place.
I have that committee. We haven't started anything yet. Okay. We have the dates.
Great. I did speak about the Focus on Faith Committee, and I don't believe there has been, and actually, no, sorry, I did email him, but I don't think there's been any meetings yet. Nancy, can you confirm that? No, Nancy is shaking her head. No, there's not. And the strategic plan, Jerry, have you guys met? You don't know?
No, it's not underway yet.
Great. Thank you very much for the updates. Next on item number 6, discussion items. The first is the Council of Chair meeting, quickly approaching November 23rd, our first meeting. As we discussed at our last meeting, the majority of this meeting will be Dr. Jean Clinton's presentation on mental health. The presentation is approximately an hour, and we've allotted a 15-minute Q&A. If we account for the 15 minutes at the beginning to kind of do our introductions and our prayer and our land acknowledgement and all of that kind of stuff, I think, Denise, we should consider doing the OAPSE commissioning ceremony perhaps before 7 o'clock, if that's possible, because I think what we're going to do is maybe do networking between 6:30 and 7 for the chairs, and perhaps we could have a different space for the OAPSE reps. I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud here, Nancy, that they could meet together and do their commissioning ceremony, and any kind of update you have, Denise? How does
It's fine. I mean, logistically, it's fine.
So just so that, and you're all new to Council of Chairs the way we're moving forward now. Okay, so because the networking session was always really important for the Council of Chairs to have that opportunity to have a discussion with other chairs from within their family schools, we thought to honor Dr. Jean's time for that full hour that she's going to present to us, if we start the networking at 6:30 to 7, where the chairs will be meeting in small classrooms at St. Nicholas, and then they can talk. And the topics we can decide today, what are the 3 topics or 2 topics we would like them to be able to engage with. And then the OAPSE reps will happen in the library, Denise, and then you can meet with the OAPSE reps in that space from 6:30 to 7, and then we can do a commissioning before we start Dr. Jean.
Fine, and they're part of that. They'll attend the Dr. Jean Clinton, so they'll be invited as well. Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So then we do need to discuss today what those topics of conversation are. So it is a bit more of a structured networking in the sense that in the past, I think it was more just a mingle, whereas we want to get them talking.
We've always had discussion questions like that.
Right, but it's usually within the hour and a half session, right?
So we usually do. Just based on from the feedback that we've heard, even within the first meeting or last year, thing that everybody seems to want to network about is fundraising, hot lunch programs, and different initiatives with the program that they're doing. Having said that, when we meet in November, I think
most fundraising initiatives will have already been set. So it's to brainstorm for the following year. Maybe you want to discuss hot lunch programs because some schools do their whole year planned in September, but some schools may be wanting to hear what are some other schools doing so they can start getting the ball rolling for the following year. Then what you want to do with the program. I'm just offering those as suggestions based on the feedback we've received, but it's up to you. Like, what do you think are the most, they're going to have half an hour. What's the most important things that you want them to start networking on? And maybe even exchange email contacts.
Janelle?
I would love to have the opportunity to talk about program ideas for sure. Because we've done quite a few things over the years, but it's like, okay, what could we possibly do different this year? And I love the idea of partnering with schools close to us if there's a similar idea in terms of pooling our funds and getting a speaker or whatever. So would love to have that discussion.
Program can be amalgamated, so you can use that money. Okay, so before we had this plan where you had to submit it to the superintendent, but you can do that within your own family schools and work with the principals. But it's really good to bring some schools together because you'll get more parents engaged.
It's just maybe question around community engagement. What are schools doing now that we're back to sort of normal? You know, what's happening now in schools for community engagement, getting parents back in?
Great. Any other suggestions? I think if we need a third, the third would probably could be still fundraising, because I think that's always an ongoing topic. People are always looking for different ideas.
That probably fill up the time.
Yeah.
Because once you're sitting at round
I was
tables
just trying to think,
with
is there
other
something else
chairs
other than
and that?
fundraising? But I can't think of anything on top of my head.
The only other thing I was thinking of is along similar lines is end of year event, like in terms of ideas. Again, we've done many things, but it's kind of like, what will we do different this year to keep people coming out to our end of year celebration at our school? So yeah, that could also be part of the conversation as well.
Another one could be what do school councils need help with? You know, so kind of coming back to us. What kind of type of supports do they need? They think they need in the coming year. You know, it could include things like mental health. You know, you throw in a couple suggested topics, and that may help inform our subcommittees and what we're doing for them.
Okay, so more ideas of what they need from CPIC.
Yeah.
Okay. And that could also include, I guess, because we'll have done the council chair meeting, the chair's training at that point. And they will have looked at the first SGF template. If they have any issues or concerns around that or information they thought was missing, that could kind of combination, because that still all comes back to CPIC. That could be our third. Instead of the, perhaps instead of the fundraising, I don't know which one you guys want to take off the table.
I imagine if we put one in there about community engagement, community activities, that could also kind of, right, that could kind of fall in there too, potentially. Now that they've done their major fundraiser, are they doing anything else? Smaller things throughout the year.
Just in terms of the format for that night, I've already met with St. Nicholas. So in terms of the space that we need and the setup for that, but what's traditionally has happened is CPIC needs to arrive early too, okay? So that maybe we gather around 6:10, just to make sure. And then because they're breaking out into family schools, we traditionally would have done that in the gym setup, or are we staying in the gym? Classrooms, okay. So, so if you, like, because you're a CPIC member, why don't we attach each of you to a family of schools? So they have somebody from CPIC sitting at that table with them. At least you can bring some feedback back to us as a bigger group when we meet in January. Okay, so if we plan to meet at St. Nicholas, which is in South Oakville, Third Line and Rebecca area, if we meet there for like 6:10, then we will all be ready to go when the parents start to go in, and they'll have greeters and everything there. Okay? And they are responsible, like they're going to have the coffee station and all that set up. So it'll be a beautiful night set up for us. But I think we need to lead that as a group of sleeping.
Great. Makes sense. So everyone's got the date on their calendar, November 23rd, St. Nicholas. We'll all plan to be there around 6:10 at the latest. Anything else you want to add, Jerry? No? All right, I think we're all set for the Council of Chairs meeting. 6.2 is winter meeting format. I'm not sure if this is not just an update because I think we had discussed previously that January and February we will do virtual meetings. I believe it's just January and February at this point.
And the council chairs in February will be virtual as well.
Correct. Okay. 6.3, the Catholic school training. We discussed that in the subcommittee update. It is November the 2nd, virtually being held. And 6.4 is the educational field trip policy number 2-19. I believe this is in draft form, Nancy, that the policy committee has asked us to take a look at the changes. Is that correct?
What Andrea has shared with the agenda is the red line strikeout. So those are the things that were discussed at policy this week. And they want feedback from CPIC about those, the red line version.
Nancy, can I ask what an extensive trip is?
Extensive trips would be overnight trips. So because the extensive trip advisory committee, ETAC, is for the extensive overnight trips. Those are the ones where you would be going to Europe or things like that.
So this wouldn't be like a camp trip?
No, but you're talking about just trips.
Okay. I just want to make sure that this does.
The exception to extensive trips.
So this policy would incorporate any kind of grade 7 or 8 traditional trips, basically. Okay. Are there any questions or concerns about the changes proposed to the policy?
So inability to pay, and Mark, HUCF supports their, but again, I guess this is exception, accepting overnight trips. So that's probably the most expensive ones. So there may be situations where even with some financial support, some families can't afford to send the kid to Ottawa or wherever. I'm just kind of thinking out loud here right now.
The cost of the trip for the elementary would never be a barrier to anyone. So schools will make every opportunity to reach out to families who choose not to, because they'll have that sense. So they know, many times the schools will know which families.
Right.
And so there's no barrier to any elementary trips. They always.
Any other concerns, Janelle?
Not a concern, just I think hats off to the policy committee because I feel like this is much more inclusive language. Like every effort sounds pretty vague. And yeah, it's more like should be included, must be included, much stronger, more inclusive language. So I like it.
Any other comments? Anything else you need, Nancy, on that?
No, good. Let me know.
Thank you very much. Okay, last item on the agenda before our closing prayer is any other business that anyone would like to put forward? Yes, Violetta.
Can I just ask if you can give an update or any information that you can share about what is going to happen with virtual school that was created in response to COVID and whether or not that's going to continue this year and in the future years?
So St. Clair of Assisi is running like a brick and mortar school, but just virtually. Okay, it has 161 students as of today. We've had some students just move to it. Okay, so students who were in the virtual school for the last 2 years went back to brick and mortar school, and the families have decided that they were more successful virtually, and so they've opted to go back. So for this year, it's still staying. The ministry has, the boards have to have a virtual opportunity for elementary, and so that's our opportunity. We do have it for secondary, but the commitment for secondary was that they were enrolled in the program for the whole year. There's only 36 students in our virtual secondary school. There's 5 teachers working out of Cafeteria to service those 36 students. So they can't take all the courses because we can't, it doesn't work, but they have opportunities. So the guidance counselors have worked together with the students. So some of the courses are e-learning, some are being taught by the teachers. Okay, back to your CBO question. And that's where they would be seeing the opportunity for the CBO courses. But even that, like, even for our e-learning is through Thomas Merton. So any of our e-learning program that the students can take is through Thomas Merton. But if they were taking a course somewhere else, like TVO, they can take it through CBO. And the guidance counselors. Does that answer your question, Violetta?
Yes, I'm impressed about the numbers really, and it's, I guess that they're really small classes, so they're really lucky those kids to have those teachers. So because of the numbers, though, it sounds like this is not going to be open probably for the following years.
Well, right now the government's mandated that we have to operate. Okay. Having said that, like 160 elementary students is a school. We have a couple schools that are less than that in brick and mortar. So we have JK to grade 8, and we have a French program for junior intermediates. So that's being offered there. And their class sizes aren't that small. Like the primary classes are all close to 20. Okay, and there's a kindergarten as well. Yeah. And one thing that we, so the administrator, so the principal is the principal of St. Vincent's and the principal of St. Clair. But what it has extra is the vice principal who's supporting. He works out of St. Vincent's, but he's supporting St. Clair at the virtual school. But what they started to do last week, so the grade 3s from the virtual school had a day at St. Vincent's. So the students, they've actually done virtual sessions, the 2 grades from St. Vincent's and St. Clair together. So then they had a day, and that's what they're going to rotate. And then the grade 5s were there as well. So they're going to do that. And for the grade 3s, it was a real eye opener because a lot of those grade 3s really haven't been, other than kindergarten, if they attended kindergarten at a brick and mortar school, haven't been in school. So just routines like going to the washroom, being outside on the playground, understanding boundaries and things like that. But the virtual students, their virtual friends are their virtual friends. And they had a team that went to cross country, and a lot of the children have made new friendships, and they don't even live in the same municipality. So it's working. It's working.
Thanks very much for that. Okay, so our next CPIC meeting is November the 14th. If you do have any agenda items, please let Jerry or I know approximately 10 days beforehand so we can get the agenda out on time. Nancy, will you be leading us in closing prayer? Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining in this evening.